Do you remember the first memory that truly haunted you? Not a moment of simple fear like a jump scare or a scolding, but the first time you felt a cold, sinking dread that something in your world was profoundly, impossibly wrong? The kind of memory your mind tries to bury, not because it's painful, but because it feels dangerous. Most of us lock those memories away. We tell ourselves it was a nightmare, an overactive imagination. But what if the door to that lock isn't as strong as we think? What if, sometimes, something from the other side pushes back? My name is Dr. Alistair Finch. I was a parapsychologist until the academic world decided my research into what I call Echo-Mnemonic Imprints, or EMIs, was too radical, too frightening. They believe memories are just neural pathways. I believe that under the right conditions, a traumatic memory can become a psychic scar, a wound that doesn't just remember the terror, but actively attracts it. A wound that can bleed into our reality. Tonight, I'm going to share evidence that proves my theory. It arrived in a plain brown package with no return address. Inside were 3 case files and 1 unlabeled audio cassette. The tape contains a single hypnotic regression session with a patient identified only as Subject Omega. I've listened to this tape countless times, and what I learned from it connects these 3 cases in a way that terrifies me to my very core. This isn't just a collection of ghost stories. This is a profile of a predator. And by the end, you will understand that the thing we fear most in the dark is not that we are alone. It's that we are being watched, collected, and studied by an intelligence that feeds on the terror of a child. Let's begin with the tape. The session starts calmly. The hypnotist guides Subject Omega back to their earliest memory. And after a long silence, a child's voice, whispery and strained, finally speaks. And it says 5 words that will forever be etched into my mind. The man with no face, in the woods behind the highway. The man with no face. A recurring motif in my research. But note the location. The woods behind the highway. Our first case file concerns a woman named Sarah. And it begins with a family road trip, a broken-down car, and a little girl who wandered into the waiting silence of the trees. It was a blistering summer afternoon. The air in the old station wagon was thick and heavy. Sarah, only 5 years old, was tracing shapes on the foggy window when the car shuddered, coughed, and died on the shoulder of a deserted highway. Her father's frustrated curses, her mother's worried sighs. As they popped the hood, a cloud of steam hissed into the hot air. Sarah, bored and restless, slipped out of the car. The grown-ups were busy, and from deep within the wall of trees that bordered the road, she heard it. A sound her parents seemed oblivious to. Faint, melodic humming. It was discordant, like a music box falling apart, but it pulled at her. She stepped past the first line of pines and the world changed. The highway sounds vanished, swallowed by an oppressive silence. The sunlight, so bright moments before, became a filtered, green gloom. The air grew cold. She followed the humming deeper, the undergrowth snagging at her clothes like pleading fingers. She found herself in a clearing she shouldn't have been able to find. The ground was barren, and in the center stood a circle of dead, blackened trees. And in the center of that circle, on a small mound of packed earth, was a figurine. It was crudely made from twisted sticks and bits of bleached bone, but it was unmistakably the shape of a man. A man with no face. That's when she saw him. Not a monster, not a ghost. A standing shadow about 50 feet away, where the trees grew thickest. But this shadow didn't shift with the light. It was a void, a patch of absolute darkness that seemed to absorb the very sound around it. It had the shape of a tall, impossibly thin man. And where its face should have been, there was nothing. Not blackness, but a profound, empty absence. Sarah didn't scream. She was frozen, a primal part of her brain understanding that movement would attract its attention. But it was already aware of her. It didn't walk. Shifted. One moment it was 50 feet away, the next, 30. There was no motion in between. Just a blink and it was closer. The humming grew louder, now coming from the thing itself. She broke. She turned and ran, blind with terror, branches whipping her face. She didn't look back. She burst out of the tree line not where she had entered, but a quarter-mile down the road. Her parents, frantic, found her curled in a ball on the asphalt, shivering uncontrollably. Clutched in her small, white-knuckled hand was the stick-and-bone figurine. They dismissed it as a nightmare, but the terror never left her. As she grew older, she filled notebooks with drawings of the faceless man. She developed a pathological fear of static on television screens, claiming she could see shapes moving in the gray noise. And she never, ever got rid of that little figurine. She told a therapist in confidence that it would sometimes be in a different room than where she left it. And on quiet nights, she could still hear the humming. Back on the tape, the hypnotist asks subject Omega what the man wanted. There's a long pause, and then the child's voice, trembling, gives a chilling answer. It says, he wasn't a man. He was a key. A key, looking for the right door. A key, looking for a door. Our second case file, from a man named James, might just show us what lies on the other side. James's story doesn't start in the woods. It starts in his childhood bedroom, in the one place a child should feel safest. James was a quiet, introverted boy. His sanctuary was his room, but he always feared the closet. Not the monster in the closet fear you see in cartoons. This was a deep, instinctual dread. One night, unable to sleep, he saw a sliver of absolute darkness through the closet door that was slightly ajar. It was darker than it should have been. Colder air seeped out. He pushed the door open. His hanging clothes were gone. The back wall of the closet was gone. In its place was a long, narrow room he had never seen before. The air was frigid and smelled of damp soil and old metal. This was his dark room. It was a place that shouldn't exist. And it was filled with forgotten things. Broken toys, dusty books, and sitting on a small, rotting stool in the center of the room was a porcelain doll. The doll was chillingly detailed, and it was the spitting image of the stick figurine Sarah had found in the woods. It had the same pose, the same lack of facial features. Just smooth, blank porcelain. James, terrified but compelled, would visit this room. It became a secret obsession. The doll, which he called the Watcher, never moved, but the room itself did. It would shift. The dimensions would change. Sometimes there would be new doors along the walls, leading to impossible, shadowy landscapes. He saw things in that room. Shadows that moved with the same unnatural jerkiness as the faceless man. Reflections in puddles on the floor that showed a different, distorted version of his own face. The horror peaked when James, as a teenager, was cleaning his actual attic. In a dusty trunk that belonged to his grandfather, he found a yellowed newspaper clipping from decades before he was born. It was about a little girl named Sarah who had been found disoriented on a highway after her family's car broke down. The article mentioned a strange figurine found in her possession. James had never heard this story. He had no connection to this girl. Yet here was his Watcher doll, depicted in the story of a complete stranger. The dark room wasn't just a personal nightmare. It was a crossroads, a place where the EMIs of different, traumatized children bled together. On the tape, the session becomes agitated. When the hypnotist probes deeper, subject Omega's voice rises in panic. The child cries out, "It's not a doll. It's an anchor. Don't you see? He uses them to see, to look through. He's always looking at us. An anchor, a way to see." This brings us to the third and most disturbing case. File number 3, Michael and the Carnival of Thorns. This case suggests that these events are not random hauntings. They are a system, a harvest. Michael's town was visited by a carnival one autumn. But this was no ordinary carnival. It had an unwholesome, transient feel. The colors of the tents were too bright, The paint on the rides was peeling in a way that looked like scars, and the workers had a hollow, uniform look in their eyes. The carnival seemed to feed on sound, absorbing laughter and screams and leaving a flat, dead silence in its wake. Michael was drawn to a particular booth. A fortune-teller's tent, black velvet with silver constellations that swirled and moved if you stared too long. Inside, sitting behind a crystal ball that showed only swirling smoke, was the figure. This time it wore a mask. A cheap, plastic smiling mask. But the body underneath was the same impossibly thin darkness, and behind the eye holes of the mask was that same face-consuming void. The figure didn't speak. It gestured to the crystal ball. In the smoke, Michael saw fleeting images. The woods from Sarah's memory, the dark room from James's childhood. Then it offered Michael a gift. A small, intricate music box. When he opened it, it played that same discordant melody Sarah had heard. The figure's intention was clear. An invitation. A transaction. Take the gift and become part of its collection. Michael, sensing a predator's trap, dropped the box and fled. The next morning, the carnival was gone, leaving only trampled grass and a profound sense of loss in the town. But other children had accepted the gifts. They were never the same. They became listless, their eyes dull. The joy, the creativity, the light of childhood was gone from them. Drained. The carnival was not a place of fun. It was a processing plant. A feeding ground for the entity that wore the faceless man like a suit. The woods are where it hunts. The dark room is where it observes. And the carnival is where it consumes. But the most terrifying part of the tape is the end. The hypnotist, his voice now urgent, demands to know who Subject Omega really is. There is a long, heavy silence. And when the voice speaks again, it is no longer a child's. It is a cold, ancient, layered whisper that seems to come from everywhere at once. It says, "I am the first memory of fear. I am the echo in the attic. I am the shape in the static. They tried to bury me, to label me imagination. But they only built my archives. You are not the archivist, doctor. You are my newest chapter." And then the tape ends in a scream of electronic feedback. I had never played the tape to the end before tonight. I thought I was the one in control. I thought I was studying it. The man with no face. The key. The anchor. It's not just an entity out there. It's the memory itself. It's the fear. And it's learning. It used these case files. It used my research. It used this channel to find new doors. New anchors. It's been in this room with me the whole time. I can feel it now more than ever. A pressure in the air. It doesn't need to hurt me. It just needs me to keep telling the stories. It needs me to make you remember. It needs you to feel that cold dread, that childhood terror, because that is how it finds you. That is how it feeds. So if you feel a chill as you listen to my voice, if you think you see a shadow in the corner of your eye that shouldn't be there, understand what is happening. The story is no longer just a story. You are now part of the archive. And the key is turning in the lock.